There have been a lot of changes after week 6 of fantasy hockey, not only to my mustache, but to the injuries of players, to the lineup changes, to the power play updates. This video is going to basically cover you for everything that's happened over the last week of fantasy hockey. This is going to be one of the longest videos I make this year because there have been so many notable changes, especially in the injury column and how that's affected players' deployments. This is going to be a good video, guys. Like I always say, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Starting this video off, we're going to run through the injuries. There are a ton of injuries, so this segment's going to last quite a while. But to get us started with Austin Matthews of the Toronto Maple Leafs, a team that's actually been a lot better since the injury to Austin Matthews, especially on the power play. But he has been placed on the IR and has missed the last 6 games. It looks like right now there's no timeline for his return, but they want him back at 100%, and the Leafs only have 4 remaining games in November, or 5 remaining games in November. So it looks like they're going to try and use that rest to help get Matthews back to 100%, with hopes for him to maybe play by the end of the month or in early December. Right now, with how the lines have shaken up, they have been generating quite a bit of offense. They won in overtime on Saturday against the Edmonton Oilers, scoring 4 goals. So Leafs land right now a little bit promising with Matthews out, but still, if you're a Matthews owner, you took him 3rd overall, definitely don't panic. Continue to stash him. I've seen a lot of people talk about trading Matthews. I would definitely be looking to trade for him if people are selling low. He's a consensus top 3 player when he's healthy, so I would definitely be looking to make moves to try and acquire him. Do not get rid of him. Just stash him on your IR for now. Braden Point here right now is considered day-to-day. He has missed a couple of games in a row. It looks like there will be quite a bit of bump to Anthony Cirelli, who I talked about in the must-have players video, who has moved up into the line 1 role with Nikita Kucherov, and then on the top power play unit, where he did score a power play goal a few nights ago. One thing to note with Anthony Cirelli here is that he doesn't have good peripherals at all. So I think with him, it's mostly going to be a 12 to 14 team league ad. So I'll be looking to add him in some of my deeper leagues. Now, the Carolina Hurricanes goaltending situation. I mean, I talked about in preseason about how I think Freddie, it's not if, it's when he gets injured. So it looks like they released some recent news. He was initially considered week to week, and right now they have disclosed that he is going to be out way longer than expected. So not good for Freddie Anderson owners. I think if you need to free up an IR spot with all the injuries that have happened over the last week, Freddie Anderson may be the first guy to cut there. It's something you definitely want to be monitoring. But on the flip side, we were really hoping now with the Freddie injury that Kochetkov would immediately boost into a top 7 goaltending role. But right now, again, he was injured as of Saturday with an undisclosed injury. They said he may be back this week or later in the week. But for right now, Spencer Martin now takes over as the starting goalie on a Carolina Hurricanes team that's top 3 to 5 in the league, in my opinion. And he did have a shutout on Saturday night. So something to consider there, something to continue to monitor. I mean, if you own both of these goalies, and it's going to be tough to stash them both in the IR, Freddie's definitely the first cut before Kochetkov because his injury is longer than expected, where Kochetkov's is just considered day-to-day. Lastly, on the goalie front here, we have Darcy Kemper, an undisclosed injury. We didn't see any updates on if it's related to the lower body injury he suffered last week or 2 weeks ago when he was placed on the IR. But he's back on the IR here. Big bump to David Riddick, who should take over the starting role and get bulk of the starts moving forward. Very unfortunate, as I'm a Darcy Kemper owner in a lot of my leagues, and I own Kochetkov in a couple of leagues. So both of these guys going down, I'm starting to scramble a little bit with my goaltending. But typically what I do is I'll add the goalie that becomes the starter. So I've added Riddick in multiple leagues, and I've added Spencer Martin as well. So just some sort of strategy to, if your goaltender gets hurt on a good team, we know the Kings, the Canes are good. Definitely worthwhile adding the guy who's next man up, who's going to be the starting goalie moving forward. Even if it's a short-term ad, as soon as the other goalies come back, you can just look to drop the starting goalie that you added previously. Moving on to the other list, laundry list of injuries. I think there's one more here. Joel Eriksson-Ek of the Minnesota Wild. Unfortunately, he did not play on Saturday with a lower body injury. He's considered day-to-day, and the same thing with Matt Zuccarello. He underwent surgery, a lower body injury. He's considered week to week right now, so not good. 2 guys that are on the top power play unit play top 6 roles, which means there is going to be some benefit if you don't own them in fantasy, because there are going to be some players, which I'll talk about a little bit later, that are going to gain significant value due to these 2 injuries. It looks like X a little bit less severe than Zuccarello. Zuccarello underwent surgery, obviously, so it's a little bit less severe. So hopefully you can get him back in your lineup later this week or maybe in the following week. But for right now, definitely both stashing on your IR plus for Joel Eriksson Ek and your IR for Matt Zuccarello. I had a question about should I drop Zuccarello at this point? If you need the space on your IR, especially with all of these injuries, I think he's fine. He's worth a drop given the longevity of his injury, likely be back in maybe mid-December. So if you can't hold off that long, I would look to cut Zuccarello from your team. Seth Jones here, oh man, he's been so good to start the season. Like, you took him like 140, 150, and he's outperformed quite a bit. And we knew that going into this season. He is just a workhorse defenseman, plays on the top power play unit. But it looked like he suffered a foot injury and has been placed on the IR. This is a significant bump to Alex Vlasic, who has been a block machine to start the season. I actually took some reps earlier in the year at Power Play 1 when Seth Jones got demoted, but Jones was placed back up there. But with Vlasic now, he moves into a pair 1 Power Play 1 role, basically being the forefront of that team's defense right now. So a lot to like here from Alex Vlasic, who should be put into a much better role. I would definitely look to add him in 12 plus team leagues. Sam Ersson, another goaltender that got injured last week. He tweaked something in practice. Looks like he'll be out 1 to 2 weeks. I would continue to stash if you own him, just because he's actually been pretty good, and the 2 backup goaltenders are very, very bad on Philly. I want to stress that. Now, what I said earlier is when a goaltender gets injured on a team, most times I will add the next man up that's going to be in the starting role. This is not a case at all, because the Philadelphia Flyers are significantly worse than the Carolina Hurricanes and LA Kings, and especially their backup goalie. So not much love here from the backup Philly goalies, but Sam Ersson, unfortunate injury, he's been really good to start the season. Seth Jarvis, the last guy on this list here, placed on the IR. Looks like he may be back this week. We don't fully know. He was doubtful on the weekend, placed on the IR, so he should maybe be back later this week or into next week. I still think it's a pretty good buy low opportunity for a guy that was going really high in drafts right now. Luckily, I don't own him in any of my leagues because the draft stock was a little bit too rich for my blood. But what I've seen here is that Jackson Blake has been moved up to the top power play unit, has been good over the last couple games, but I'll talk about him a little bit later. But with Jarvis right now, just a simple stash in your IR with hopes that he does come back in the next week. Now, the final list of injuries for this video, Tage Thompson was placed on the IR. Super unfortunate. He's been really, really good. But there has been some positive news with the Tage injury. Although placed on IR, he has been skating and he looks like he may be ready to play on Wednesday this coming week. So I still think for now it's a bump to Cousins and a bump to Ryan McLeod, 2 guys that should hopefully benefit in Tage's absence. But with Tage coming back, it just overall just boosts the team's offense. It helps all the players around him. So hopefully with Tage back on Wednesday, this team will start to produce in the offense like we've hoped for this season. Tage has been extremely good, so hopefully you're just able to stash him and able to activate him in a couple of days. Another injury to the Buffalo Sabres, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Like, these 2 guys are arguably 2 of the top 3 most important players on the Buffalo Sabres. You could obviously argue Rasmus Dahlin's number 1, but with Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen currently considered day-to-day, Devin Levi gets a bump in the short term as he looks to be the starting goalie. Now, they did claim James Reimer off waivers, so I think with the return of Luukkonen, we might see Levi get sent down and Reimer just being the full-time backup behind Luukkonen. So something to monitor there with Devin Levi. I know he's a highly touted prospect in terms of goalies, but it looks like he just hasn't been good enough in the NHL. And there was some news that potentially will be sent down with Reimer there now as the backup goaltender. But with Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, stash him on your IR plus. He's been good. He's going to see a lot of volume moving forward. Now, Chris Letang here, dealing with an illness. So right now, the outcome, I think illness is spelled wrong. It should be another S, but still, he missed Saturday's game. He seems to be day-to-day for now. Something to monitor there. He did get taken off the top power play unit with Brian Rust returning and Raquel being very good offensively. So those 2 have now moved into the power play 1 role with Chris Letang now losing that. I still think he's a solid stash. He's a really good peripheral defenseman. Should still be good for about 35 to 40 points. Although this Penguins team just... it's time to burn it down at some point. Like, they have not been good. And I feel bad if you're a Penguins fan watching this video. They just have not been good so far this season. And they haven't had much to work with. So it'll be interesting to see the developments there. Moving on to Victor Arvidsson, an undisclosed injury. He currently remains day-to-day. The one thing I want to note here, he was potentially available for Saturday, but didn't end up playing. The Oilers are running 11-7, and when they run 11-7, their offense is very, very good, especially a big bump to some of their top 6 forwards in Nuge, McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman. Those guys are going to all play big minutes, especially Draisaitl, McDavid. If you watch the game against the Leafs on Saturday, Draisaitl was taking reps on the 4th line. McDavid, same thing, 3rd, 4th line. They go out there for an extra shift. So usually when they play 11-7, they get a big bump to some of those centermen and then some of the top 6 forwards because they're running one less forward. So with Victor Arvidsson here, if you own him and you may have dropped him, just something to monitor on the free agency. He hasn't been overly good so far this season, but just something to note. Now, lastly, if you're in a deeper league, maybe you own Hampus Lindholm. You was fortunate enough, if you owned him, he was actually moved up to the top power play unit, and McAvoy got demoted. And in that game, Hampus Lindholm got injured. I read that he broke a kneecap, so he was placed on IR, considered week to week right now. Very unfortunate news for the Bruins, who have been struggling so far this season. But something to keep in mind, if he does come off of IR, he was on power play 1 in that most recent game he got injured. So something to keep in mind here, this Bruins power play has not been very good, but if he comes back and he potentially moves back up to the top power play unit, this could be a pretty good add a little bit later in the season, with hopes for him to have a little bit of offensive spark when McAvoy got demoted. So a lot to talk about here with some lines and power play updates. Let's start off with Ryan McLeod. The outcome here is that he was promoted to line 1 in Tage's absence. It was originally Cousins, but now it's Ryan McLeod who will be centering Peterka and Tuck. Skated 17 plus minutes in his last 2 games. I think he could be a add in 14 plus team leagues just in the short term. If you need someone to just fill in a role there for you, I can see the appeal, maybe in 16 team leagues as well. His roster percentage really isn't that high. And speaking of low roster percentage, Jackson Blake here was moved into Seth Jarvis's role on the top power play unit. 12 shots, 15 minutes average time on ice over the last 3 games, scored a goal on the power play as well. So something to note here, he is playing on the 4th line, but he is top power play. We know Carolina does like to shuffle their lines and actually give the 3rd and 4th line quite a few minutes versus their top 2 lines. Like usually they'll play like 13 to 14, where some teams play like 9 and 8. So just something to note here, Blake, a little bit of a risk with him playing 4th line, but the top power play opportunity definitely has some interest in me, and there is potential for him to move up in the lineup at some point, but we'll see what happens with Jarvis's return nearing. Alex Vlasic, as I mentioned, with Jones hurt, he becomes basically the next man up to be that pair 1 workhorse power play 1 defenseman. I definitely think he's worth an add in 12 plus team leagues. His peripherals have been good, and now the add with him on top power play unit, I think there's a lot to like there. So Colorado, I just want to give a full team update rather than just talking about each individual player. So with the team now healthy, Nichushkin's back, Drouin's back, Lekkonen's back. We were talking about in some of the comments with some of the commentators, just like where are the changes going to be here. So this is what we're seeing so far. So Middlestad remains on the 2nd line center, power play 1. Lekkonen is line 1, power play 1, playing an extreme amount of minutes right now. Nichushkin got reactivated. He's line 2, power play 2, still playing about 20 minutes. And then lastly, Jonathan Drouin was moved up to line 1 with Lekkonen and McKinnon, and Drouin was placed then on power play 2. So right now it looks like it's going to be Rantanen, McKinnon, Makar, Middlestad, Lekkonen on power play 1, and then Nichushkin, Drouin, both still in top 6 roles, will be on the 2nd power play unit. So I think in the short term, we're definitely going to need to monitor what happens there. I've been asked some questions about what to do with Middlestad. Definitely think as long as he still remains on power play 1, and now he's going to be skating with Nichushkin and Rantanen, I think you have to be holding him. Lekkonen here gets probably the biggest bump out of anybody, just because he is going to be skating that top line and the top power play unit, and the minutes have been outstanding. I'll get into that a little bit later in this video, but still, this is what we've seen from the Colorado Avalanche since the team has gotten healthy. But continue to monitor and update to see what happens if they flop the lines a bit, if they change the power play lines. I'll be sure to update you as soon as I can. And if you want immediate updates, hop in the Discord. Link will be in the description below, and I'll even leave a comment for everyone to join. Tons of people in there. Just a quick plug. We'll move on to the next lines of power play updates. Moving on to the Columbus Blue Jackets, I'm shocked to see that this hasn't happened yet, but Adam Fantilli has been moved up to the top power play unit. I definitely have a lot of interest in him. He was like one of the most highly touted prospects in his draft. He went 3rd overall. So right now I have a lot of interest in 12 to 14 team leagues. It was super weird how they were playing it with Fantilli. Like, they know the upside he has, but they were still just hiding him on like line 2 with like Matthew Olivier, and I don't know who else the centerman was, but Trey Fix-Wolansky. I'm just throwing out names at this point, but still very interested in Fantilli in 12 to 14 team leagues as long as he continues to play power play 1. For a short stint, he was moved up to left wing 1, but it looks like he's now back down to center 2. If he got left wing eligibility, he would have a lot more interest for me. but just a center eligible guy. Power play 1, lots of upside, definitely have some interest. Moving on, we have the LA Kings, a short update here. Quinton Byfield and Brant Clark. It looks like the LA Kings are trying to move to a 5-forward power play 1 system, which is kind of crazy to me because I feel like Clark hasn't been a problem on the top power play unit. But still, right now, Byfield moves up to the top power play unit, Clark down to power play 2. I think it's a weird move, but it's something to monitor in case things change over the next little bit. But definitely not good for Brant Clark owners right now, especially because a lot of his points have been on the power play and his minutes have been good. So just something to monitor there. The Minnesota Wild, very similar to the Colorado Avalanche. It's just better to give you an update of everything that's changed rather than individual players. So lots of changes here with the injuries to Joel Eriksson and Zuccarello. The lineup has changed a ton. Boldy has moved up to the line 1 center. And I have in brackets there, monitor his eligibility because he might get center, left wing, right wing eligibility, which just improves his value significantly. But it looks like he is skating with Kaprizov now on the top line. Rossi has been moved down to the line 3 center and still on power play 2. I was really hoping he'd get moved up to power play 1 and still sustain that line 1 role, but it looked like they're trying out Boldy at center, which is going to be interesting to see what happens. Lastly, the last two things, Marcus Johansson here has been moved up to the line 1 right wing beside Boldy and Kaprizov and power play 1. So definitely some interest there in 14+ team leagues for Marcus Johansson, who's in a very, very good role right now. Lastly, Ryan Hartman looks like he's going to be the line 2 right wing and on top power play unit. Again, very surprised they're choosing Johansson Hartman over Rossi here, but still something to monitor moving forward. I think Johansson gets the biggest bump here, who's going to be the line 1 power play 1 guy. Lastly, Stefan Nason, I pronounced it right. Telling you guys. Move up to line 1 with Meyer and Heischer. Still on power play 1. The shot and hit rate has been very good. He's been putting up a lot of points in the power play. His team looks very, very good. So definitely, if you're a Stefan Nason owner in 12+ team leagues, continue to hold. If he's available, definitely look to add. Moving on, the last set of lines and power play updates, we have the San Jose Sharks. So again, another full team update, lots of changes here. Celebrini has been moved down to power play 2. Don't understand. Why is Wenberg still there? Zetterlund was for a brief stint moved up to the power play 1, but it looks like he has just been moved up to line 1 and then back down to power play 2. He has been, and this is my nickname. It was my nickname for Tippett last year, was Mr. Consistent. I think Fabian Zetterlund's Mr. Consistent. Even in last night's game, didn't have a shot or hit, but he had an assist and 5 blocks. It doesn't stop this guy. So I love his fantasy outlook so far this season and moving forward. Lastly, we know it's been a complete mess with Jake Wollman over the last little bit, but it looks like he's returned back to the lineup, back in his usual role in power play 1. So still, if you're a Wollman owner, definitely continue to hold him, definitely continue to play him. Minutes are there and the power play opportunities there. Anthony Cirelli, I talked about him a little bit earlier, moved up to line 1 power play 1 in points absence. I only think he's worth rostering if you need a guy desperately for some power play points because the shot, hit, and block rate are well below league average for forwards. But the point upside is definitely there. So he's definitely just a goal, assist, power play point guy, but the peripherals very lacking. Bobby McMahon here has moved up to line 1 with Tavares and Marner. With the absence to Matthews, we've seen quite a bit of shuffling in the lines right now. But McMahon has been moved up to left wing 1. 3 goals in 18 minutes and 30 seconds over his last 2 games. So as Matthew continues to be out, McMahon continues to earn trust from the coach. He may be worth rostering in 14+ team leagues, just something to monitor there. Lastly, Jonathan Lekaramaki, the guy I put a Calder bet on at like 200 to 1 in preseason. He has been recalled. He's skating line 1 power play 1 right now. He was the SHL Rookie of the Year, the World Junior MVP last season, had 5 goals and 39 shots through the first 7 games in Abbotsford in the AHL. A very highly touted prospect here for the Canucks, and with Besser out, it looks like Lekaramaki is going to be manning that line 1 power play 1. I think he's worth an ad and worth a flyer in 12+ team leagues. Now, prospects don't work in hockey as they do in baseball. If you're a fantasy baseball fan, sometimes they don't pan out at a young age, whereas in baseball, the young guys always seem to do well. But something to monitor here from Lekaramaki, maybe a 14-team league ad right now, and if he continues to play better minutes, if we see 16, 17, 18, he would be worth adding in 12+ team league. Jumping over now to the Breakout Watch, players that have had very good couple of weeks or a very good start to the season. I want to start off with this Dallas Stars. One of the most perplexing teams right now. Like, it's crazy to see the struggles to Hintz, Wyatt, and Robertson, where this second line, Marchman, Duchesne, Seguin, have been so good. So with Marchman here, 15 games played, 6 goals, 17 points, 29 shots on goal, under 16 minutes per night. Shooting percentage is really high at nearly 21%, 8% above his career average. Now, do I think Marchment moving forward will be a point per game player? No, I don't. I think he's going to be a really, really strong sell high. But if you've owned him so far this season, he's been extremely good. I honestly think it was almost impossible to predict the outcomes of this Dallas team. And I was talking with some of the FP guys, and I was saying this is the outcome or the impact on some of the best players on Dallas with them having so much depth, because they're able to play these second, third lines 16, 17 minutes a night, and they're producing as much as the first line would be. Whereas if you look at the Colorado Avalanche, they play their top line 24, 22 minutes per night, and their third, fourth line barely at all. So it's crazy to see the impact that depth has on players in fantasy, and this has been the outcome with the Dallas Stars so far this season. Honors Lee continues to be a very, very consistent fantasy player. 18 games played, 7 goals, 13 points, 60 shots, and 93 shot attempts, playing under 17 minutes per night. He currently has the best shot rate in the NHL right now, and I'm very shocked to see that his ownership percentage is not going up, even though he's been producing quite a bit over the last week. So a lot of love here for Anders Lee, who continues to go under the radar in fantasy. And speaking of under the radar players, I feel like I've given not a lot of love at all to Joey Daccord this season. He has been the backbone of this Seattle Kraken team right now. 12 games started, an 8-3-1 record, a 251 goals against average, and a 918 save percentage. He's basically across the board a top 10 to 12 goalie in fantasy right now, who is going extremely late in drafts. So a lot of love here from Joey Daccord, who continues to go under the radar. That's almost like the lack of coverage for the Seattle Kraken. They're kind of a boring team. They don't really have any big superstars, so it's hard to cover them sometimes. But man, Joey Daccord has been a pleasant surprise. If you've owned him in fantasy, if you owned him this season, kudos to you. He's been very good so far this season. Now, JJ Peterka, one of the biggest sleepers going into this year, is producing the way we've hoped. 16 games played, 7 goals, 16 points, 5 points in the power play, adding 36 shots and 94 shot attempts. This is actually one of the craziest. There's a stat, it's called the shot through percentage, and most of the times, like, defensemen sit at like 30 to 40% shot through percentage, forwards about 50 to 60%. It's crazy to see Peterka here at like around 40% shot through percentage, which means basically he has 94 attempts, only 36 of them have hit the net. So calculate the difference between the two, and that's your shot through percentage, right? 36 divided by 94. I can't do that math in my head, but still, JJ Peterka has been firing the puck a lot, just not a lot of hit on the net, but still a point per game player for a guy that you drafted around 10 plus. He's been very good. Now, lastly, I want to talk about Arturi Lehkonen. 6 games played, 6 points, 16 shots on goal, and 5 hits. Now, the craziest thing about Lehkonen right now, and I just asked the FP guys, guess his minutes, and one of them said 19 minutes 30 seconds. He's up to 24 minutes average time on ice for a forward. This is insane to see. Some of the highest minutes I've ever seen from a forward. Now, the one thing I want to note here is they're healthy now with the Chushkin and Drouin back, so maybe Lehkonen's minutes go down. But a forward playing with McKinnon on this amazing top power play unit in the minutes here, he has the upside to be easily a point per game player moving forward, and one of the best valued fantasy players in the next couple of weeks or the next couple of months, depending on what we see happen to this Colorado Avalanche lineup. But it seems like Lehkonen has earned the trust of Bednar and the entire team there. So a lot to love from Lehkonen. If you've stashed him on your IR, you draft him, you stashed him, kudos to you. If you're able to add him, you got a fantasy stud coming up for you. Lastly, guys, this has been a long video, but hopefully you stayed with me throughout the entire thing. Let's talk about some of the goaltending here. So right now I want to mention David Riddick. With the injury to Darcy Kemper, he moves into a starting goalie role, a 252 goals against average, an 892 save percentage. Definitely worth it adding 12 plus team leagues. And I just want to note that don't panic about the save percentage there. Like, the LA Kings just don't give up a lot of volume at all, and that's kind of the reason why Riddick, just his save percentage is hurt. It was the same thing with Kemper. Like, in the most recent game, they were at home against the Detroit Red Wings. He allowed 1 goal on 18 shots. So just something to keep in mind, that the goals against average will be good, but just caution on the save percentage because they don't give up a lot of volume. And speaking of teams that don't give up a lot of volume, Spencer Martin here, starting goalie with Anderson and Kochetkov hurt. He had a shutout on Saturday, 4-0 win over the Senators. So something to monitor with Spencer Martin here, as he may not be a good goalie himself, but he's still on a top 5 team and a top 5 defensive team in the NHL. So Spencer Martin here definitely becomes a priority adding 12 plus team leagues. Alexander Georgiev, man, talk about roller coasters with players so far this season. He might be the #1 roller coaster. So it looks like he has taken back over the starting role with the Avalanche. but he was banged up. It looks like he will be okay, something to monitor. But for those who held, he seems to be the starting goalie right now. It's been a crazy development in Colorado land, but with this team getting healthy, Georgiev should be good moving forward. Cam Talbot has taken the reins in Detroit with a 242 goals against average and a 927 save percentage. I do think these are eventually going to regress back to the mean just because the Detroit Red Wings just are not a strong team in general. I don't think they're going to be close to a playoff team this year. But still, with Cam Talbot, he's been very, very good this season. The volume is definitely going to be there with Detroit giving up a lot of shot attempts and a lot of shots against. So Cam Talbot here, been very good to start the season. Hopefully, you were able to add him or able to own him. I think there's really no competition with Lyon or competition with Husso. It's probably Talbot's stat moving forward. Lastly, man, Dostal has been such a beast to start the season, but it looks like we're going to get a 50-50 split between the two moving forward. It was a great early run with Dostal, but now with Gibson back, it looks like they're going to be splitting time. Maybe they look to move Gibson. They're not a competitive team this season. There's no real need for two starting goalies on their team, but we'll see what happens. The volume's going to be there. I'm still holding Dostal because when he starts, still like 35 shots, 38 shots against, and maybe 3 goals against. So I'm still like him for the volume in the games he plays. It's just something to monitor with John Gibson coming back. That will do it for the changes after week 6 of fantasy hockey. Hopefully you were able to stick with me through the entire thing. This was a really, really long video, but still fun to record and continue to update you guys on all the changes so far this season. If you enjoyed the video, guys, make sure you leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video.